Hi, my name is Sean Shapiro, and this is another episode of TPS Traffic Jam where we jam about traffic. Today I'm joined by both Trevor Kenhai and Jeff Catlin. They are with the City of Toronto and very specifically the Automated Enforcement Team. Guess what? They do automated enforcement. That's red light cameras and speed enforcement cameras. And welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Sean.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's been a while. We've been talking and trying to get our ducks in a row so we can meet up at the same place at the same time. But you are busy guys.
Yeah, that's an understatement. We're pretty busy.
That's okay. I totally understand, but I really appreciate you carving out time to spend with us. And, it's funny, the topic of automated enforcement comes up a whole lot, as you can probably imagine. And, I probably the most common question I get is, so how much can I speed until I get a ticket? And, of course, my almost automated answer is, you shouldn't speed. But, what does that look like on your end? Do you get a lot of people writing in, asking questions, or just angry?
Yeah, go ahead, Trev. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say we get everything from A to Z pretty much. Every question imaginable you can think of. When the program first launched a couple of years ago, we did get a lot of those questions. But same with you. We just reiterate that the speed limit's not a guideline; it's the law. And if you don't want to get a ticket, don't speed.
Yeah, as soon as you start giving people an area or an idea of what is permissible or that the camera won't trigger until you get a certain number, that just becomes the unofficial speed limit, and then we're not making streets safer by slowing people down. We need people to truly go the speed limit, and it's for a good reason. It's safer when you go slower. But that's a whole different situation. The red light cameras, I've been seeing those go off with multiple flashes. A lot of customers in that department too.
Yeah, there's a considerable amount. We will have, by the end of the year, we should have 298 cameras in Toronto alone for the red light camera program. There's a considerable amount.
298 red light cameras, and we recently just got some new speed enforcement cameras. Have they I know they announced that they were coming. Have they actually been installed already? The new speed ones?
Not yet. We're aiming for early next year, but our warning signs have been in place. So the warning signs to warn the motorists and drivers that they'll be coming soon.
That's awesome. I think that the automated speed enforcement, even though it does cover areas that are covered by police officers, I think it's a fantastic way to slow people down. The big question is, do you think it's working? Do you think people are actually slowing down and actually paying attention to lights when the cameras are present?
Yeah, if you don't mind me answering this, Jeff, we know it's working. We have the Hospital for Sick Kids is actually doing an evaluation of our program on the effectiveness of automated speed enforcement. The final report is scheduled to be released early next year, but they did release some preliminary findings which were very positive, and that's posted on our city's website. And it does show that there has been reductions in speeds where the cameras are being used. And an increase in compliance with the speed limit.
That's amazing. We hear stories where some drivers don't get the message and they go through a dozen times. And I know when Mayor Tory came out for a launch of Back to School a number of years ago, or a couple of years ago, he said that one driver got like 12 tickets out of the same camera, evidently not getting the message. But that there's an overall reduction in speed is very promising. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we were pretty happy when, as Trevor said, the preliminaries came in. We had a chance to go through it and kind of review it, and we were like, yeah, we knew it would work. This is confirmation that it's working. We're pretty happy with the results.
So do you find that, I shouldn't even ask this as a question because I see it whether I'm pulling people over on the road or or we're hearing about it in this case. Some people do not change their behavior regardless of the number of tickets they get.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that generally we can't control that. I mean, other than us continuing to give those tickets, we're hoping that as a general consensus, vehicles that will slow down will also hopefully slow down those individuals in those areas. So, is it 100%? Not yet, but we're hoping to get there.
And again, these measures, tickets and education, these are all to try and slow down and get compliance and safe driving behaviors out of the people who are willing and capable of changing their behavior. Some people just don't care and they're willing to pay the ticket. And some people who lose their licenses when they're being given tickets by police officers, well, they don't care about that either and they just keep driving. So, rules and guidelines are for the people who we can reach. And there's some who, unfortunately, we can't. So we understand that. Those are the outliers. The average person gets a ticket and changes their behavior because it wasn't a good feeling and they don't want a repeat of the situation. So right now, no demerit points as a result of tickets issued by the program, right?
Correct. So the owner of the vehicle is actually sent the ticket, not necessarily the drivers. Like when a police officer pulls somebody over, you're ticketing the specific driver, so points can be assessed. But for the automated enforcement program, because we're not privy to see who it is that's driving the vehicle, then it goes to the owner. And
that's a very common question that we get on Ask a Traffic Cop, our daily live stream, because people are concerned. Lately, there's been a rumor, and I think it's just a rumor. They're saying that, well, you shouldn't go to a court to fight or challenge because if you do, they're going to give you points on your license when you negotiate. I obviously think that's incorrect because I don't think that they'd be able to change the ticket from one that is applied to driver owner responsibility and convert it to driver responsibility. But have you heard anything about that? Are people complaining of things like that?
I haven't. I'm not sure if Trevor has, but I don't think that we've heard anything to that effect.
No, not at all. I mean, we meet with our partners in court services and legal services pretty regularly, and we haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say. I mean, they make it very, very accessible for folks to view images of their tickets. They can go online. They can either pay the ticket. They can request to meet with a prosecutor, or they can schedule a trial. The trials can be done virtually too, as well. So
wow.
there's lots of options to sort of better that service experience.
Have you heard any really good excuses for why they're not guilty?
No. That's a funny question. I don't know if there are any good excuses for that, but
well, it's funny you say that because I'm often asked what's my best traffic stop, funniest traffic stop, best excuses, and I can never remember any of them at the time. And as soon as I'm off the air with a radio station, I then come up with all these great answers. So I put you on the spot. I apologize because I don't like the question myself, but it's a different perspective because you're not actually roadside with the driver. You're maybe hearing things secondhand after the fact. I think really it's great work. Do you think we'll ever see a day where we have cameras everywhere at every intersection or at, on all roads to govern speed and behavior?
That's another good question. I know in Europe, in the UK especially, I think there's from what we see, there's cameras on like every corner. But I mean, hopefully not. If the program is working and drivers are slowing down and obeying the speed limits, then there wouldn't be a need for it. So the onus goes back onto the drivers, right? And even with the automated speed enforcement program, I mean, we're focused in community safety zones and school zones. So these are like our most sensitive areas, right? Most of our cameras are in areas around schools. So there's a really good, and all of us with kids and young kids that are in schools, I think it's really important that everyone is aware when they enter those sensitive areas. And, we post signage to warn drivers, to warn motorists. So hopefully that's having an impact and we feel safer walking to school, riding to school and things like that.
And that's the goal, is to make, to protect vulnerable road users, cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, all of those people that are sharing the space. And I think a lot of motorists forget that there are other people out there because they're so focused on what they're doing. They got to get to where they're going, and it doesn't really matter about anybody else. But that's the wrong opinion or the wrong perspective. It's really about a community space. Roads are shared environments. And I think that what you're doing with these systems is fantastic. When we talk about the signage, you mentioned that you have signage going up or already up for the cameras that aren't even in place yet. In the UK, I understand they go so far as to paint their speed cameras and a different color, like bright yellow, to ensure that everyone sees what's coming and there's no hiding. I don't know if we've ever thought about doing that here or if there'd be any reason to do it. Do you think? Have you heard about this?
I
Jeff,
haven't heard about it. Part of what we do on that is, I mean, this is the reason why we give a 90-day warning ahead of the cameras being installed. We're trying to ensure that the people that are traveling in that area are well aware, well ahead of that camera being installed. And then even when the program is in effect, or when the cameras are firing, there's still signage up there to say, originally it says it's coming soon, and then the next set of signs that come out saying this is in effect. We have the lists on our website, as Trevor said already. We do our best to try and ensure that the public knows where these are. It's not like we're trying to hide behind a tree and see who we get. We're trying to.
That's my job. I like to hide behind the tree.
but we try to ensure that the public and the drivers are well aware of what we're doing. And it's like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're projecting, here's what we're showing everybody. We are doing this out in the open. And if you're still going to speed, you're going to get a ticket.
And some of those GPS apps are all pull that data
Yes.
from our website too. And they'll let motorists know where the cameras are. Just like they let us know where police are, right? It'll tell us, hey, there's a cop up ahead.
And I have no problem with that. I have no problem with them tracking and sharing and doing, because if it slows you down, it's better than not slowing you down. I'd prefer people to get charged and have the unfortunate ticket to change their behavior, and maybe they wouldn't need to know where things are because they just drive appropriately all the time. But hey, whatever. At the end of the day, it's about trying to make the roads safer. And I don't think we need to paint these things yellow or put flashing lights on them. I think that they should catch the people who choose to ignore the signage and drive above the speed limit, regardless of if they got 16 warning signs and 3 letters and 2 newscasts. There's no excuse for speeding. So bending over backwards to make life better for those who want to speed, but not in those areas, isn't my priority. Or I don't think it should be a priority, but that's just me. If we talk about enforcement, are there plans to expand? I know that in Europe, I think it's the UK in particular, they have cameras now that are capable of identifying drivers who use cell phones. Have you seen any of that technology or information about it?
Go ahead, Trevor.
We're always getting a lot of information and coming through our desks, and we do a little bit of research here and there, and our team looks into these things, and we've seen some of them, and obviously a lot of the work that we're doing is dependent on provincial legislation and what's allowed, right? So we operated within those limits, so that we try to use the tools that we're able to use. And if those tools are introduced to us one day, then we'd be really interested in exploring more.
Well, I definitely know the law hasn't gone there yet, but I think it's interesting technology. And in a world where the police can't be everywhere all the time, I think you guys in your program fill in the gap so that we can make the roads safer all the time. Now, I think that we have a huge problem with distracted driving, and technology that would help us in that area, as unpopular as this statement is to everybody listening, is that we need to catch people doing the wrong thing, and it can't just be when we're standing there watching. I think that technology has a great place if one day, but I'm curious if you'd heard about it. There's also the, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to actually say one of the interesting ones that we've been looking into or reading about a lot lately is the point-to-point speed enforcement. So, where the cameras are and where traditional police enforcement is, it's one spot. So when drivers are aware of the camera or aware of a police officer, they tend to slow down, and then once they pass, guess what happens, right? They speed back up again. So with the point-to-point systems, they actually track you from the beginning of a segment to the end. And if you're, speeding anywhere within that segment, it kind of picks you up.
Well, my understanding is it basically calculates your time between the 2 points, and if your average is over would be possible if you were, doing the speed limit, you're done. I think those are amazing. I don't know how the 407 doesn't utilize that, considering the fact that they know when you're coming in and getting off, but that's another story. That is very cool, because very often people talk about the 407 being the unofficial Autobahn of Ontario. It's not, and there's obviously speed enforcement done there, but something like that would be very interesting to be put in there. Of course, anyway, it's a whole different situation. School bus stuff. I saw some recent updates in the HTA for owner responsibility for not stopping for school buses. Is that something that might come into play with you and your team? Would you be involved with that when it finally makes its way here?
The school bus program, we currently are not involved with that. We're involved. Our main piece here is to be involved with red light camera and the automated speed enforcement programs. We've had questions posed to us about it and whether or not we would run the program. I can't really talk a lot to it.
That's okay.
Because we're not heavily involved in it. So we're just kind of keeping our ear to the ground to see whether or not that is going to become a thing. I know that there was some pilot projects that were done across the province, but at this point we haven't really heard a ton more of it, unless Trevor's heard something I haven't.
No, we're in the same boat as well. I mean, here in Toronto too, I think most of the you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, you might know better than me, but I think most of the school buses they stop on the same side of the road. The kids get out on the same side of the road. They're not crossing major intersections or anything like that.
Well, that may be the case, but still, their drivers are obligated not to pass, and we are hearing on a regular basis that people are not following the rules. So I'd love to see these cameras come into play in Toronto. I know they're doing good things in other jurisdictions. So I was curious if it was going to be something related to you guys, but I love the automation.
Yeah, I can say that it's not that we've kind of pushed off the side. We're paying attention to what's happening, but at this point,
not there yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet.
So let's break it down. Right now, someone goes through a red light camera. Now, that means they've crossed into the intersection, that white line on the ground. They've crossed it or entered it after the light is turned red. That's as simple as it is. There's no secret sauce. It's not they have to be past it. Once they've crossed the threshold of that white line, after the light is turned red, they are they should be expecting a ticket.
Correct. So generally, any vehicle that's still on the approach to the stop bar, the big white line, if the light has turned red before they hit that stop bar, then the camera fires once, and then it'll fire a secondary picture to show that the vehicle continued through the intersection. At that point, those images are then down from the camera. They're brought into our system, and officers review, verifying that yes, it's a legitimate charge, and they lay the charge.
That's awesome, and so simple. It's a yes/no thing. You either did it or you didn't do it.
Yeah, it's black and white.
And there's photographic evidence, which I love. I love evidence. And people, have often ask, well, what's the best way to defend against this? And I said, well, I don't think there is a defense for it. There's maybe you can negotiate a payment plan in court, but not a defense. Because how do you defend yourself when we've got you on film effectively? Does anyone use film anymore?
It's one of the things that I say to people who actually inquire about it to us, and they ask, well, how can we beat this ticket? And I have the same answer every single time: stop. You're supposed to stop, and you won't get a ticket.
It's like that movie where was it Time Cop or was it Minority Report? It's pre-crime. If you want to do it, you have to prevent yourself from doing the crime. Once you've done it, you've done it. And I know crime offends traffic violators because hey, it's not criminal. It's leads to serious injury and death. It's as criminal as it can get to my books, even though it doesn't fall into the Criminal Code of Canada. But when people get these terrible driving behaviors that lead to people losing their lives and being severely injured, it's a crime. So oddly enough, I get tons of questions about these, and one question that I have been shaking my head at, scratching my head, swearing occasionally, the number of people who want to know why they're getting tickets for making right turns on red lights.
I can answer that very simply, Sean, because it's come to us multiple times. Those people check the HTA. You are allowed to proceed on a right turn after coming to a complete stop, ensuring the way is clear, then you can proceed. Somebody going around that corner without ever stopping, yeah, you're going to get a ticket. Simple as that. And I've often said to people, show me a provision in the HTA that says you're allowed to turn right on red without running the red. No charge will get laid. But I've yet to have anybody come back to me with it.
I was recently at a stoplight, there was a right turn onto a driveway which takes you to a mall, and I watched 6 cars, one after the other, run the red light. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I've seen it now, but 6 cars, one after the other. No advanced right turn light, just bingo bango, one after. I was blown away. Couldn't believe what I was seeing, and to see this all building on having seen questions from our TikTok channel asking why they're getting tickets. How are these people getting licensed is my question, because this is all stuff that you need to know when you get licensed, and yet we have people who seemingly have no idea what they're doing behind the wheel of a car or a motor vehicle of any kind. It's shocking to me. It's very disappointing. So I don't know if you know a stat offhand or even a guesstimate, but is that a large percentage of the tickets, right turns on red?
It's considerable at all the intersections that we monitor for right turns. The right turn on red is kind of unique. It's dependent upon whether or not it's a flow through intersection laneway as well. If it's flow through, straight through, and right, you get considerable on both. We've actually had incidents where we had one individual a few years ago who was ticketed 5 times within an hour. He must have been waiting for somebody in the area and just kept going through the red,
Wow.
right turns, and you just shake your head and you go, like, what part of this don't you get?
Well, and so it's not that person must not realize that what they're doing
I
is
agree.
against the law. There's no way that someone knowingly does that repeatedly and in front of a camera with all the signage and whatnot, because you're oblivious at that point. You have to be.
It's unfortunate, right? Because I mean, the HTA is there for a reason, and the law is there for a reason. And part of it, especially in your example with the mall, is there's a lot of pedestrians that are using the sidewalk, right? And they're they may not be paying attention, or they may be trying to cross the road, or whatever the case is. And if you're just blindly turning, I mean, even if the light is green, you want to slow down and make sure that nobody's crossing, right? But it's unfortunate that nobody checks that blind spot when they're making that right.
I think the biggest problem is you have to put your phone down when you're making a right turn on a red. There are so many people doing so many different things, and you compound all of the bad actor driving, the people who are speeding, driving aggressively while on their cell phones. Like, they're just combining all of these things into one they shouldn't be driving at all situation. It's scary. There's a lot of scary drivers out there. I know this is going to be a question that if I don't ask, I'll be questioned until the end of the days. What is the cost of a red light camera ticket?
It's $325. So broken down, it is part of the money goes back to the province, part of it goes to courts, and then the remainder comes back in to help finance the existing program.
So it's recycled to fund the cameras, to service them, I guess, and to do all the work that's being done. So it subsidizes itself. I'm often being accused of being a tax collector, of just going after the working person who is doing nothing wrong until we get there to take their hard-earned money. So it's a very interesting it's a very interesting situation where I try and explain to people that they are the captain of their own destiny.
I agree.
I don't know if captain of your own destiny is the right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things that the people have that, and we've heard it as well. But when you say to people, "But you're breaking the law," like driving is a privilege. It's not a right, and there's rules that you have to follow. And if you're not following those rules, you're going to get penalized. It's for the safety of everything that look at the programs as a whole as to what they prevent. Like, what's a single life worth? And
brings it back to Vision Zero.
Right. Exactly.
You're under the Vision Zero umbrella, I'm assuming, or at least involved in some degree with that verbiage.
Yes, our programs are both involved in the Vision Zero part of it. Obviously the ultimate goal is to never give somebody a ticket and never have anybody run a red light, and that would show that the program's working perfectly. That's our goal.
And I say that while zero tickets is the goal, but zero lives lost is the real goal. And if people
Correct.
would choose to drive and adhere to the rules, no tickets would be issued. And I would happily go have a Timmy's instead of sit out and do traffic enforcement. But there's tickets to be written because people are choosing to engage in the behavior that we want to stop.
I agree.
Now, we talked about the red light camera cost. Speeding, how does that work? Is it based on the speed, similar to how the regular HTA charges? The faster you go, the more you pay?
Yes, that's correct. So there are set fines, and yeah, that's right. So the higher the speed over the posted limit is how much you would pay.
So, if I'm not mistaken, the cost per kilometer is higher for a speed camera than it is if a police officer were to write the ticket, because we actually have the lowest fines in the country in Ontario. Where a 15 over ticket is quite low cost when a police officer issues it to you. But there are demerit points, 16 kilometers. We have demerit points. People are so concerned about their points. What is the cost when it comes to the speed then, for you guys?
So where we enforce through community safety zones, which allows us to double the fines.
Oh,
And that's why our fines appear to be higher. They're not. They're per the regulated table under the HTA.
that makes perfect sense now.
Yeah, so that's why they're higher. They appear to be higher, but they're not. They're per the HTA.
So that means that I'm looking at the table here. A Schedule 1 is going to be $75 with the victim fine surcharge is $95. But for 20 over under the community safety zone would be $150 and $180. Is that am I saying that correctly? Am I properly representing that calculation?
I'd have to pull it up to confirm it.
Have you got one that comes to mind that you know?
No, I can only tell you what happens if they go 50 and over.
Okay, tell me what happens when you go 50 and over.
Well, there is no set fine in the.
For you guys too?
There is no set fine. There is no out of court settlement. So we actually have to serve the owner of the vehicle with a summons to appear in court.
Now we're talking. I didn't even consider that you could be getting into the realm of now. It's strictly speeding as opposed to stunt driving. You can't lay the stunt driving charge. But how does that work? It's still owner responsible. But wow. So you serve them and they have to go to court. And have you seen fines handed down in that range and estimates as what those could be or where they would be?
We haven't seen too many of those, but yeah, the fines are much higher. But I'm not sure what the specific amounts would be.
Okay, that's very interesting. I find that fascinating. Now, here's a funny thing. I may be related to someone who is a sibling. Oh wait, did I just out my brother for getting a ticket when he was in Australia? They get points on their speed cameras. The owner gets demerit points. And they have to go into court and out the person that actually had the car if they were in fact trying to say that someone else was driving. So they, it's like, okay, no problem. You weren't driving. Who was? You gave the keys to somebody. You're responsible until they take responsibility, type thing. A very interesting approach. Do you think that would change anything for us?
I don't know necessarily, Sean. I mean, it could be something that we could work with, but right now, again, the regulations only allow us to charge the owner of the vehicle.
For sure.
So, but I would love to see that, where, if you're the person getting the ticket, but somebody else was using your car, then out them. Have them. I think
we'd see the repeat offender numbers go down for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if mom and dad were lending, their kiddo the car, suddenly mom or dad would be, not just having your allowance wouldn't go to paying for it. They wouldn't be taking the hit for your points.
Exactly.
Suddenly it would, there'd be a reason to take the keys away. There's a whole other layer. But people don't like getting tickets now. If you gave them points, they'd like it even less. So that's probably a good thing.
I agree.
And I don't know if this is going to be the most popular episode or the least popular episode based on the words coming out of my mouth. But the people who like that, the people that follow the rules will cheer. The people who don't will not.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, there's always a group of people that say what they want about the program, but there is a considerable amount of people that are supportive of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Have you had a lot of positive feedback? Do people write to you and say, thank you for being in the community? It slowed people down. It makes me feel safer, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I would say we actually have more positive feedback than we do
Exactly.
negative feedback. The negative ones stick in your head, obviously, because there's more work involved in trying to curb some of those. But we get a lot of positive feedback. We get a lot of residents who actually want more cameras, and they want them in areas near their homes and where they work. And they a lot of times they want it everywhere, not just in community safety zones, right? They want them everywhere. So we do get a
I'd
lot
be all
of
for that.
Yeah.
I used to live at a T intersection, and I wanted to put up my own GoPro camera for capturing I used to watch people pass people who were stopping at the stop sign to run the stop sign. I'd love to see stop sign cameras too. I see cameras everywhere. Then we can get some drones. We'd be set from every angle if I was in charge. I'm not in charge. just to clarify, I'm not in charge. Awesome. So we've talked about a whole bunch of things. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed?
I was actually interested to answer that earlier question. If you could answer, what was the most interesting excuse you had for speeding or getting a ticket?
So I was recently on News Talk 1010 with Jim Richards, and he asked me that. And I think there's been some creative ones. Very often I have to use the restroom, or I had Taco Bell and it's going to be explosive. Those are the kind of scare tactics that we get. And I followed someone. I've said, okay, give me your license, ownership, and insurance, and let's go. The closest bathroom is at the next intersection. I'll follow you there. And I've sat in the car with his stuff. I wrote up the tickets, and when they came out, they looked both ways to see if I was still there. Sure enough, and they were shocked that I gave them a ticket. Your inability to plan or is not a reason to speed. There is no excuse. So that is a common one, and that's how I deal with it. But I thought the most creative was I just washed my car and I don't want it to dry with spots.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, there's the one that I've never heard firsthand, but I thought it was a brilliant joke. And it was my wife left me 2 years ago for a policeman. And then the officer says, well, why were you speeding then? He says, I thought you were trying to bring her back. Oh. So I thought that was a good one, but not one that I actually heard. It was one that I saw on the internet. But you know what? It's funny. There's no good excuse. So I've seen some wonderful displays of acting in crocodile tears. And oddly enough, when the ticket gets issued anyway, the tears dry up. There's a lot of there's a lot of room that people or acting and attempts that people will make to get out of a ticket. But at the end of the day, the only way is to avoid it entirely, to just not do the thing. And you don't save any time. What drives me bananas is that people do 10, 20, or 30 kilometers over the hour, and then I keep seeing them at the next intersection at the same stoplight that I'm at. They've gone no further, but they've burned more fuel, worn out their brakes a little bit more, put lives at risk. For what? To feel better about how your top speed is? Like, that's really what they're doing. Maybe if they were on the highway for a sustained period of time and they did 10 over, they'd see that become a reality. 5 hours of driving at 10 over, you could do the math and say there's a real win there, even though you're still breaking the law and it's not allowed. But when you're in the city and stop and go, what are you doing? You're getting a thrill, and thrills are not worth it, in my opinion.
It's a miracle anyone can speed in the city, especially during rush hour, right? And you know what? Life is too short. I don't understand why people are always rushing and rushing and rushing. Life is too short. We need to slow down a little bit.
Well, and that's where I say, and in terms of my book of tricks for how to have a peaceful drive to work, leave yourself extra time. Leave earlier. Everything in Toronto takes an hour to get to, so give yourself an hour and a half. My kids do this. I do this. I set out my clothes that I'm going to wear the night before, so I don't have to think about and shop in my closet for what do I want to wear. It's done. I can be until I get my first coffee a zombie, and I can just put my stuff on and get to the kitchen, and all of that guesswork is taken out of the equation. And I can listen to my podcast or the news or whatever it is, or have time for the clearing of snow and when things like now are happening. It's not that I'm stressed out and I'm trying to make up for lost time because I can't plan properly. So that's my spiel.
I agree. Do the same,
easiest
Sean.
way to avoid it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, and my kids are hilarious. I mean, they even like, Dad, don't put your feet on the. We have a rocking chair, and yeah, don't put your feet there because my clothes are going there because I have to put. Like they are militant about preparation, and I love it because that's setting them up for success. They're both under 10, and by the time they drive, I imagine they will have got so much extra time that they will be learning languages on their drive as opposed to stressing about getting anywhere. It's something that I learned when I was at the police college, and something that I repeat constantly and forever is early is on time is late is unacceptable. If you're just trying to get there, you've already lost before you started. Like if it's, you should have time to unwind, relax. I know I'm talking about perfect world stuff.
I have a similar statement, Sean, and it's 5 minutes late is better than not getting there at all. And that's something that other people need to consider as well.
That is a totally different perspective, but it is absolutely correct. Getting there safely without killing anybody, because that's really what you're putting at risk. You're putting your life and the lives of everybody else on the road just so you don't look bad, feel bad, lose face or time. Because, some employers will dock you pay when you're late. And rightfully so, because you have responsibilities. But, how much are you going to lose? And is it worth someone's life to save that?
Correct.
Agreed.
I like it. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that we actually got to do this and have the conversation that's a year in the making, but it's been a lot of fun. If maybe we can do this again, do an update episode and talk about new developments and things in the future, because I'd love to continue this conversation, later.
Absolutely.
We'd love to. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, this has been Trevor and Jeff from the City of Toronto Automated Enforcement Team. And it's been a pleasure. And keep doing the great work that you do. I like hearing all the questions that are created as a result of the tickets that you are in charge of being issued.
Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Sean.